Is the way you solo over backing tracks holding you back from hitting your potential as a lead guitarist? Lars, one of my students, recently sent in a solo for me to review, and whilst there was a lot to like, I also noticed some areas for improvement. So in this video, I'm going to break down his solo, I'm going to talk about what worked, I'm going to talk about what didn't work so well, and I'm going to give him and you watching this simple fixes that you can use to level up your lead playing today. All right, let's get started. I've got Lars's solo, I've got his video loaded up here on my laptop. We're gonna watch through it together, and after that, I'll offer some constructive feedback. So let's go. Nice. Sounding great, man. Thank you so much again for sending in that video. Right, off the bat, there's quite a few things I really like about this solo, which I want to address. One, you have a great sense of timing. Everything was locked in on the beat at all times. Two, great use of motifs. You opened the solo with... Yeah. So that right there is a motif. Like, he opens with this phrase that he repeats and finishes a different way the second time around. So this is the opening phrase he plays. And then he does this again. But this time he finishes it. Hear that? It's like a call and response. This is the initial statement. And he waits a little moment and he answers that statement with this. Okay? Yeah, so great timing, great use of motifs. There were other things that stood out to me there when I was watching that. Yeah, just general great knowledge of the fretboard. Like, there was I didn't hear any bum notes. There were some note choices where I would encourage you to target different notes, which I'll get to in a moment, but yeah, I just wanted to point out that you have a great understanding of the pentatonic boxes, which is clear because you started out, mostly in this position for a lot of the solo. So at the start I was thinking, is he just gonna stay in this one position or is he gonna move around a bit? And then you went up here and did something like this. And then you also had this. Another great use of a motif, by the way, so hats off to you for that. But yeah, my point is that you were moving around the entire fretboard, which I always love to see. It shows you're confident in your abilities and your visualization of the fretboard, which of course is huge. There was some good use of chord tone targeting, but let me just go back to the start and I want to hear what he plays over the chord change from A minor 7 to D minor 7. Okay, so what you're doing there, like, you are getting in chord tones for that D minor 7 chord there with this. To my ears, it sounds a little odd going root, 3rd, 7th without the 5th in there. I think there could be an opportunity for another creative motif in that part, like maybe instead of doing this, you could go... Hear that? So I'm going through a minor 7th arpeggio there. I'm going through that from low to high a couple of times, so it's kind of like a motif, right? This would be the statement. And then the answer would be... there I would be going up to the root note for the A chord when the chords change back from D minor 7 to A minor 7. But that was still a good example of, you know, showing that you are aware of the chord changes happening, which is great. I'm interrupting the breakdown momentarily to give you a quick heads up. Everything that I'm referencing in this video, from the backing track to the soloing concepts, is from my new course, 80/20 Lead Guitar Mastery. And if you're watching this video on the day that it goes live, today is actually the last day that you can join during the pre-sale with a massive discount. But even if you're catching this later, you can still click the link in the description box to check if enrollment is open, and if it isn't, you'll be able to join the waitlist for next time. Either way, this course is designed to help you break out of predictable scale pattern noodling and finally start soloing with freedom across the entire fretboard. Let's get back to Lars's solo. Let's continue. We'll listen to it again. Okay, that right there. What's going on harmonically is the chords are going, this is the turnaround of a minor blues progression. So you've got the 5 chord, then the 4 chord, and then the 1 chord. And to highlight that, Lars is hitting the root and the 3rd in the E minor 7 chord, which is the 5 chord. And he's doing the exact same for the 4 chord, the D minor 7. When it comes around, he's hitting the root and the flat 3rd. Another great example of chord tone targeting. If you don't know what that means, by the way, you've probably listened to guitar solos before where it's almost as if you can hear the chord changes happening through the person's solo, through their note choices alone, even though they're not strumming any chords, right? That's something you can learn to do when you learn scales on a deep enough level. You'll start to realize that they contain many of the notes in the chords that you're soloing over. And this is a prime example of that. The chords are going, and Lars is playing something to that effect anyway. It's showing an awareness of the chord progression, and it shows that he knows what he's doing, really. So let's keep going. Okay, I loved all of this. That reminds me of, it's kind of Jimmy Page-esque, I guess. Who else? Maybe Paul Kossoff as well. Kind of classic rock or blues rock influence there. I love that. And then what you did there when you moved up to the 4 chord was great, but I will make one suggestion for this part. So let's just listen to that transition from the 1 to the 4 at this point again. Let me just put that back a bit. 1 chord, 4 chord. Okay, right. What you did there was you played, you basically played a D minor pentatonic phrase, not just over the D minor 7 chord, but continuing into the A minor 7 chord. And to me, it sounded like a little bit of a clash. Let's just listen to that part one more time. I'll try and explain what I mean by that in more detail. 4 chord, 1 chord. Yeah, so the first part of that I like. I think, based on what you played after that, that you're visualizing position 1 of the D minor pentatonic here. Which I wouldn't advise doing. I would see this. I would see all those notes as position 3 of the A minor pentatonic. Because after all, we are in the key of A minor, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't channel that D minor sound over the D minor 7 chord while still playing notes from A minor pentatonic and the A natural minor scale, right? The real issue I have with this part is that you did this. Something like that, where you're landing and leaning on this D root note very heavily, but you're doing it at a point where the chord is no longer D minor 7, it's going back to the A minor 7. So it kind of has this weird clashy quality where I think you'd be much better off finishing this on an A root note, right? Okay, so let me just listen to that part one more time. Yeah, let me just try and play over that. I don't know how this is going to sound on camera, but... Hear that? Sounds just a bit more connected to the chords because you would be landing on the root of the 1 chord when the 1 chord arrives, right? As opposed to landing on the root of the 4 chord, okay? I hope that makes sense. Let's continue because there's still a little bit more left to go in this solo. Okay, that's all great, to be honest. Like, I think I mentioned earlier, but this... That's another great use of a motif, which is something you did earlier in the solo. You opened with... And now you're using another motif here. You're repeating this phrase. Initially, you're playing that phrase over the E minor 7 chord and leaning on that E root note, which is great. Then you play basically the same thing over the D minor 7. And then when you go back to the A minor 7, you know, something to that effect. All those little phrases sound connected to each other. It's just a great use of motif development there, so great job. You finished with descending A blues scale phrase. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I do think there is an opportunity to add a bit more spice to the end of your solo by going in more of a harmonic minor direction. So let me just try and play something that demonstrates what I'm talking about here. I'm going to borrow that motif that you played, and rather than ending with, I'm going to throw in some spicy harmonic minor stuff. Let's see if I can pull it off anyway. So... Hey, okay. So, what was I doing there? Well, we got the motif right here. And when we go back to the 1 chord... what did I play? Okay, basically what I did there was I played an E major triad, which might sound weird to you given that it's played over an A minor 7 chord. It's played over the 1 chord, right? But pay attention to this note in the middle of the triad. That's a note G sharp, which relative to A is a raised 7th. Now, anytime you're soloing in minor keys, the Aeolian mode should really be your bass point, the Aeolian mode and the minor pentatonic, right? But it's also always an option to throw in a raised 7th from the A harmonic minor scale, which is a scale that, like Aeolian, has 7 notes. They're very similar. The only difference is this quality of the 7th in each. So in A Aeolian, you've got G as the flat 7th in the scale. That's the last note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But in A harmonic minor, you've got G sharp, a raised 7th, which sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you can hear that raised 7th adds a bit of spice and tension to the sound, right? And there's a couple of creative ways to add that into your solos as opposed to just going like, and as opposed to just running through scale patterns, right? So one of the ways I like to incorporate that harmonic minor note is by playing it within the context of a major triad built from the 5th note in A harmonic minor. I know that sounds like a lot. It might sound confusing, but basically, if you stack thirds from each of the notes in the A harmonic minor scale, meaning just build 3-note chords from each of the notes, right? From the 5th degree in A harmonic minor, you would get an E major triad. E is the 5th in A harmonic minor, and if you go up in thirds, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get an E major triad, and that E major triad contains a raised 7th, right? So that's kind of what I'm targeting there in that part where I was borrowing the motif that Lars used. Whoops. I was trying to work that E major triad into the solo to channel that harmonic minor sound briefly, just to add a little bit of tension. You don't want to overuse that raised 7th in harmonic minor. I think it's best used sparingly, but it's a great way to add a bit of tension and heat. So now what I want to do, how long have I been recording for? This is kind of an unedited video, guys. I haven't made a video like this ever before, I don't think. Okay, well, I think what I want to do now is I'm going to take a listen to Lars' solo a few more times. I'm going to load it up in my DAW, and I want to try, I don't know if this will work, we'll see what happens. I want to try blending some of his licks with some of the ideas of my own that I've outlined in this video. I think one of the first things I pointed out was, instead of doing this over the 4 chord, would be to go for more of a D minor 7th arpeggio sound, like. Also, we had that other part where he was going from the 1 to the 4 chord, where I said try focusing on landing on an A root note when that A minor 7 comes back around instead of a D. And then also we had that harmonic minor thing that I just talked about. By the way, the plan for this video is to show a transformation in a couple of months' time, right? So I've asked a bunch of people to submit solos over this same backing track. These are all people that have got 80/20 lead guitar mastery. And I said I would make an initial video where I review the solo and offer some feedback. Then in a couple of months' time, after they've worked through the material in the course, I want them to submit a new version of the solo, and we can listen to the before and after transformation. So I look forward to hearing Lars's transformation after he's worked through the lessons in the course. Anyway, I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna practice parts of Lars's solo, see if I can come up with something of my own that blends my ideas and his ideas. Thanks again to Lars for submitting the solo. Huge thanks to Lars for submitting his solo for review. I'd like to remind you that everything I've referenced in this video is from my new course, 80/20 Lead Guitar Mastery. Today is the very last day that you can join during the pre-sale with a huge discount, but if you're watching this later, you can still click the link in the description box to check if enrollment is open or not. If it isn't, you'll be able to join a wait list for the next time around. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.